Next, we'd like to welcome Helen Creeblay, the president of Vernon K. Creeblay Foundation. She is a respected leader on immigration and citizenship issues and a frequent author and speaker. Her creative and practical approach has been covered by several national news organizations and is respected by many across the political spectrum. Please welcome Helen Creeblay. Next, Jennifer Korn is the Executive Director of Hispanic Leadership Network. Previously, Ms. Korn served in the George W. Bush administration as Director of Hispanic and Women Affairs in the White House, as well as a Senior Advisor to the Attorney General of the United States. Please welcome Ms. Korn. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome the Honorable Raul Labrador, who represents the 1st District of Idaho. Congressman Labrador serves on the House Judiciary Committee and the Committee on Natural Resources and was the first congressman to call for the resignation of Attorney General Eric Holder. Please welcome Raul Labrador.
Katie, thank you so much, and your Spanish was impeccable. I sure do appreciate that, and I know rolling those R's can be a challenge. Respecting families and the rule of law, a lasting immigration policy, is the title of this forum. And as someone who is an Hispanic American and one who works with Spanish language media, I have to say that there isn't a topic today that has done more to divide our country unnecessarily. When we speak about those who are undocumented, it's something that really hits home to the Hispanic community. Our children go to the same schools, we go to the same churches, we shop at the same places, we go to the same hospitals. It's a deeply personal issue. The issue of what to do with those who are undocumented, and yet at the same time find a way to be able to improve the immigration policy and have a respect for law is critical. We have an outstanding panel today who is going to deal with these issues and more. And now I would like to turn the podium over to Dr. Whit Ayers.
Thank you, Helen, and thank CPAC for giving us an invitation to address one of the most important issues facing America today. I believe we are in an epic struggle against secular socialism. I believe the American left would dearly love to turn America into another Western European-style state with 75% marginal tax rates, entrepreneurs fleeing, gagging debt, and a life of Julia, cradle-to-grave government. We are losing the battle against secular socialism at the moment. For the last 6 presidential elections, we've lost the popular vote in 5 of them. We have failed to reach 50% in 5 of them, and the time we reached 50, it was only by 0.7% at 50.7%. If we are going to stop the tide of secular socialism, we need more allies. We need a lot more allies in a lot of different places. Don't you think that a group of incredibly hardworking, family-oriented, church-going, entrepreneurial, spirited people might be a good place to look for some more allies? I think we should. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about here. This format doesn't allow us to do charts, but if you will give me your card afterwards, I'll be happy to show you a few charts, but just let me demonstrate a couple of things that are coming. If you look at Americans who are over age 65, 80% of them are non-Hispanic whites. 8% are Hispanic. If you look at Americans who are alive today, 5 years old or younger, only half of them are white, and 1/4 of them are Hispanic. That's not some kind of projection. That's what the census says about today's American population. Every single month for the next 20 years, 50,000 Hispanic youngsters will turn 18 years old and become eligible to vote. Many of the people in this audience are college age. By the time your kids are ready for college, non-Hispanic whites will be a minority of the American population. Now, people can complain about it, they can wring their hands about it, they can have angst about it, but the one thing they can't do about it is change it. That is the America that is coming. And if we hope to have a vibrant center-right coalition, it sure better reach out aggressively. Now, there are some who argue that Hispanics are natural Democrats, that there's no way in the world a center-right coalition will ever gain the significant support from Hispanics. My question to them is, what is your answer? What is your answer to how we are going to revitalize a center-right coalition unless we do reach out aggressively to Hispanic Americans? We may have lost 5 of the last 6 popular votes for president, but I'm actually a lot more optimistic than that would make it appear. We are, in many ways, in the same position the Democrats were in 1988. They had lost 5 of the last 6 popular votes for president. They looked like they had nowhere to go to get it back together. Along came Bill Clinton, said, "I'm a new Democrat," and ushered in a new period of Democratic dominance of the White House. I am absolutely convinced that we are only one candidate and one election away from resurrection. In order to be resurrected, we have got to have a different message, particularly on this issue. We have got to have different messengers. And you are going to hear from several of them during the course of this conference. I happen to think one of them is an incredibly talented man, and I would say that even if he were not a client of our firm. You're going to hear this afternoon from Marco Rubio, the RG3 of American politics. We also need a different tone. What kind of tone do we need to use? Well, in order to look at the right tone, all you need to do is look at the man over my left shoulder. In his farewell address to the nation in 1989, he said this: "I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city, built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here." Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in a nutshell, critical social secularism is the critical battle that we're here today. We need more allies. If we are going to be resurrected, we have to have a different message, and we need to have a different tone. And now I would like to invite to the podium Dan Garza, Executive Director, the Libre Initiative.
Thank you so much. From the English pilgrims who colonized the new land, rugged pioneers who pushed boldly westward, and those nature-hardened souls who tamed the Northwest many years ago, to the waves of Germans, Irish, and Italians who came to America seeking opportunity, our nation fulfilled more dreams and generated more prosperity for more immigrant families than any other nation in history, each one driven by the belief, if I am free, I'll prosper. America's rugged individualism, free market system, and a Republican form of government that kept government in check was exactly what worked for over 300 years to keep America the richest, most prosperous nation in the history of the world. It was no different for my parents who came to Central California back in the mid-60s, seeking to make a better way of life for their children as farm workers. My parents saw America as un país favorecido por la mano todopoderosa de Dios, a land that was favored by the hand of God Almighty. Our family would work the fields and orchards in the states of California, Nebraska, and Washington State. Dad took his savings of over 20 years and borrowed the rest from family to risk it on a small business in central Washington State. Soon the enterprise turned into a moneymaker, and we were on our way to fulfilling the American dream. My family, like many families before, had become part of the common immigrant narrative. Hard work, perseverance, and access to the free market would allow us to thrive in America. Still, even though most of us are not more than a generation or two away from the immigrant experience, today immigration, as Helen said, has become one of the most divisive issues of our national discourse. The rise in the number of immigrants now living and working in the United States without proper authorization has led to valid concerns about the effects it has on wages and public finances, as well as the potential security this threat poses. And yet, incongruent as it may seem, it is also true these same immigrants have become an important part of the U.S. economy. From high-skilled, high-tech professionals to those who work the most menial of jobs, they are men who fix roofs, mow lawns, wash dishes, and fill our supermarkets with fresh, cheap produce, dairy, and meats, and women who attend to the elderly and care for our children. Some time ago, let me say, our failure to advance reform has kept families divided, hindered needed assimilation, and the deserts along our border states now serve as graveyards to hundreds who never made it out. Some time ago, I ran into an old friend, Felix. I asked him why he had not been to church for some time, where I customarily would see him. He shyly said he had been deported about a year ago and had just made his way back to Washington State. Fue una experiencia terrible, Daniel, he told me. About 20 of us were on our 5th day crossing the Arizona desert, and by then the searing sun was more than we could bear. A woman in the group begged the rest of us to stop, said she couldn't go any further, that she needed to rest. Felix's eyes welled up, and he said, "We left her behind to die. To my everlasting shame, we left her behind to die." I placed my hand on his shoulder for a while without saying a word. Americans know that outside of an improved economic condition in an immigrant's country of origin, the best antidote to illegal immigration is a smart and effective legal immigration system. Reform that decriminalizes the relationship between a willing worker and a willing employer, parties who are struggling to respond to market forces. Americans know businesses need to hire the necessary workforce that will create the economic opportunities and the profit that they need to compete in the global economy. And so Democrats have proposed a policy prescription that calls for a straight path to citizenship. Republicans, on the other hand, support an employment-based program that would provide the certainty of legal status, with a smaller number expressing support for permanent residency, but not enough at this time to support passage. So what we have is a conundrum. The thing is, in 2007, after a Republican-led Senate passed immigration reform, a Democrat-led House killed it after groups like LULAC and the AFL-CIO announced its opposition to the guest worker component of the bill. 5 years later, it's déjà vu all over again. If the Democrats force a vote that calls for a path to citizenship, the bill will almost fail. And if the Republicans propose legislation that calls for mere legality while coming up short on path to citizenship, the bill seemingly will also fail. My hope is that American conservatives will come together to demand a bipartisan compromise, a compromise that improves the American economy, a policy that honors our immigration legacy, and yes, reform that would allow hardworking people to come out of the shadows and assimilate like many groups that came before them. And I'm sure Congressman Labrador will speak to this point. An employment-based visa program, for example, that would allow for someone to petition for permanent residency maybe after 2 to 4 to 6 years after being employed, crime-free, and not have been a burden to society. Children, I think, would be treated different in this law. It is true that the complexities are many, but if immigrants burden American taxpayers, the law can limit entitlement benefits. If you feel immigrants do not honor American values and our common language, we can impose tests of English proficiency and mandate constitutional classes. Whatever your grievance happens to be with respect to immigration, we can use this opportunity for reform to strengthen America. Social policy must incentivize desirable conditions and boost human potential, not stifle it. Failure to change the status quo would hinder economic opportunity, limit our individual freedoms, and continue to harm family well-being. And that would be un-American. Thank you.
So Dan gave us a very personal journey of his family emigrating to a land favored by Almighty God. Hard work, perseverance, the immigrant experience is the cornerstone of that. And yet at the same time, he recognizes that those who live here illegally have in some cases affected wages and salaries, and that is a worry. But at the same time, the economy has become more dependent on these workers. The best antidote to illegal immigration is smart immigration policy, partisan compromise that unites immigrants and employers crime-free. And now it's with great pleasure that I invite Helen Kriebel, founder and president of the Vernon K. Kriebel Foundation, to join us on the
Thank you, Helen. For many, many years, we've been hearing that Republicans have lost elections because we've strayed from our principles. But even today, we tend to make up our minds for or against an idea based on our understanding of the issue instead of evaluating it against our principles. So I would like to start by reminding all of us what the core conservative principles are and how they relate to immigration. We as conservatives believe in limited government and lower taxes because we, as responsible individuals, can govern ourselves. We believe in free markets, supply and demand, and a vital private sector in which we as individuals are free to succeed or fail without government intervention. We believe in the rule of law, but not in a massive police state governed by our federal government. We believe in secure borders, which protect our national sovereignty. We believe all men are created equal and should be treated equally under the law, allowing no special deals for special groups. And we believe in a moral and humane solution to our issues. So, what immigration plan that has been put forward by Washington fulfills those principles? Republicans are the party of ideas. We need a plan based on those principles, a plan which reconciles the needs of our businesses for foreign workers and the need to secure our borders. And the solution has to be simple and it has to be doable. The red card guest worker permit does exactly that. Here are the key points to the red card solution. To begin with, let's have two paths: a path to a work permit, unmuddied by all the requirements of citizenship, and a path to citizenship that anybody in the world can apply for, whether they've got a guest worker permit or they don't. It is very important to think about the fact that work permits do not need to be a federal responsibility. There is nothing in our documents that says that is required, and it's about work. And work is about the business community. It should be the business community's responsibility to deal with guest worker permits. First of all, guest worker permits ought to be market-driven, which means to obey the law of supply and demand. When there are lots of jobs in lots of different areas, lots of visas. When there are very few jobs, very few visas. It should not be limited by these data-driven panels that are being suggested now, which the unions are proposing, where they decide how many workers you need to run your business. That is a terrible idea. And lastly, it needs to be job-specific. A work permit is about work. It should be issued to a specific job. Secondly, it should be private sector implemented. We suggest employment agencies who are masters at putting jobs and workers together. They should be licensed by the government. That is a role of government, and checked up on occasionally, not on a regular schedule, to be sure that all is going well. But employment agents are masters at what they do. They're incentivized by the profit motive to do the job efficiently and professionally. That is why private enterprise works. Here's how it does work. Employment agencies will create databases which do not exist today, where employers can post all the jobs that they would like to fill with foreign workers, what they will pay, what the requirements are, where potential workers can post qualifications, what they are looking for, what their requirements are. The match is made. The worker makes an appointment with the employment agency, comes in, gets fingerprinted and photographed. That information goes to the National Security Database and the terrorist watch list. If the worker can pass that scrutiny and has a job, then a red card should be issued and the worker should be free to go to his job in the United States. Here is the red card. This is the work permit. It is a secure card with a microchip embedded in it. In the microchip is a photograph, the fingerprints of the person, the job he takes, where that job is, the employment agency that issued it. Whatever requirement is attached to it can be imprinted in this little microchip. It can be imprinted in a maximum of 48 hours, and it costs $5. It is scannable by border agents, by police, by an employer, and an employer who has this card and scans it in his machine that costs less than $100, he will have 99.9% security that the person this card was issued to is the person who presents this card to him or her. Workers then have a legal work permit, and therefore they must be treated like American workers. They must be given minimum wage. They must be covered by workman's compensation. They must pay taxes. And it's not paid for by taxpayers. This red card and the process is paid for by fees on both sides at the employment agency. And interestingly enough, this is a huge advantage to the American worker, because tell me, what businessman would go to a headhunter and pay the fees if they can find the worker they need in their own community for free? This program provides opportunity, protection, and fairness. It provides border security because people looking for work will go through gates in a proper process instead of trying to sneak across the border. Our border agents can assume that anybody coming across the border is now a criminal, and they can catch them all, and they are very capable of doing this. It works for foreigners seeking work because they have a proper format in a database to see what jobs are available, utterly transparent, and post their own qualifications. It works for the undocumented workers in the United States already. They make an appointment with one of these employment agencies, get photographed, fingerprinted, go through the National Security Database, and prove they have a job. You have to have no criminal record, and you have to have a job, the only two requirements of this whole process. So it works for them too, and it works for American employers who can have workers when they need them in an efficient plan. So, to conclude, this should be a cornerstone of any immigration plan, regardless of how the citizenship efforts go. It shouldn't be intermingled with citizenship and green cards. 60% of the people who come to work in the United States do not want to be citizens. They need efficient access to work permits. And so the question is, do you want a 1-week work permit or do you want a 15-year one? And that separation between citizenship and work permits is what makes a difference. This is a sensible plan. It is supported by the majority of Americans, and it is doable, and it is consistent with our principles. Please go to our website, redcardsolution.com, for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific. Well, the core conservative principles as they relate to immigration need to be implemented. Republicans need to reconcile a simple, doable solution that incorporates humane, compassionate solutions. Work is about business, not about government. It's based on supply and demand, which is why temporary work permits are so important, and in particular, a red card. Helen proposes an employment agency that links workers with employers. It's a red card that is not only, the fees are paid by both sides, and it's $5. which I think makes it that much easier. It's a legal work permit, and it creates opportunity, protection, and fairness. And now it's with great pleasure that I pass the microphone to Jennifer Korn, Executive Director of American Action Network.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to be back at CPAC. I remember the first time I came in the 90s as a student, and it really has shaped my activism on the conservative movement. And I have to thank Chairman Al Cardenas also for having the vision to have a panel on immigration reform where we could talk about this in a very thoughtful manner and come to solutions. One of the things that I would like to talk about is the fact that the United States immigration system is broken. It's completely broken at every level, and we need to fix it. Immigration reform is a conservative issue, and we need to follow the lead of Senators Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake, Rand Paul, Congressman Raul Labrador, who's here with us today, Paul Ryan, Governors Scott Walker and Susana Martinez, and I could go on. We have many conservatives who are very thoughtful on this issue and actually want a solution. This can be a conservative issue. A broken system is hurting those issues that are very important to us. It's hurting our economy, our national security, and what we prize so much as the American dream. We have a tendency to focus on only one or two of the items that surround immigration reform, but really there's 5 components to immigration reform that if we address them, that we could actually have a workable system and that we won't have the perpetual problems that have been going on for about 30 years now. The first thing is overhauling the legal system. There is no line for immigrants to get in line to come here in a great process. It's an arbitrary, antiquated system, and it turns away high-skilled workers, it turns away the low-skilled workers that we need, and it also is only based on 7% employment. Upwards of 90% of the people that come here, immigrants come here, is for family-based. If you look at other countries, they have 70 to 80% that are based on employment. Shouldn't we have a system that is based on our economic needs and that helps our economy? And also, we have something that's called the diversity lottery, something that was Ted Kennedy's baby, where 55,000 people get to come here randomly. Why shouldn't we do away with something like that and allow that to be in work categories? It just doesn't make any sense, and that's why overhauling our legal system is really important. Second, we need to have a temporary worker program. There are people who come here undocumented, mostly to get work, and when our economy is good, we have more people that come here undocumented. And thanks to President Obama's horrible economy, we have a net zero immigration right now. But when our economy starts to get better, people will start coming back for work. So we need to have something called a temporary worker program, or as Helen talks about her guest worker program, a vehicle by which people who want to come here on a temporary basis that fits, again, our economic needs can do so and then go back home. It's estimated that about 20% of those who are undocumented here now would actually like to go back to their country of origin, but because of being afraid to go back and forth across the border, they stay here, and then they bring their spouse, and then they bring their children. So now you have 4+ people who are permanent behind the shadows instead of one temporary worker. And this is something that is a conservative issue because it helps our business, it helps our economy, and it's something that big labor is against. And I see if any sort of breakdown happens on our moving forward on immigration reform, it will be because big labor will not allow a temporary worker program to exist. And it'll be because President Obama can't stand up to labor unions. So I think it's something that we need to advocate for, and also we need to have. We had something back in the 50s called the Bracero program. It had a lot of problems, but instead of fixing those problems, we just did away with the program. So having a temporary worker program alleviates some of those symptoms that we have with undocumented workers in the country. Enforcement. Of course, we know that enforcement is very important. Everybody wants a secure border. But right now, what we're doing isn't working. In 1992, we spent $355 million on just border agents. Now we spend $2.7 billion on border agents. Yet, we've tripled the amount of people who are here undocumented. Why is that? We need to work with the border governors, not rely on DHS, but with the border governors on what actually works at the border to secure our border. The second thing is we need to realize that 40% of those who are undocumented come legally. They have through a work visa, a student visa, or a tourist visa. And so they're not crossing the border, they're coming legally. And so we need to fix our entry-exit system so that we could track who are here and when they need to leave. Otherwise, we will continue to have that problem as well. It's been proposed that DHS be the end-all, be-all on saying what is a secure border. I don't think so. I think we need to talk to the border governors, because what works in Arizona is not the same thing that works in Texas and not the same thing that works in California. And we need to, thank you, we need to give the American people the knowledge, or the fact that the federal government, we're not going to rely on them on what is an actual secure border, because they don't have faith in the federal government to determine that. And so I leave that to the people who actually live on the border. Fourth is worker verification. We need to allow employers to be able to verify who works for them, and we shouldn't penalize them if the federal government fails to give them some kind of system by which they can verify who are the workers who are here and if they're actually legal. And lastly, earned legal status. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm not even talking about residency. I'm talking about earned legal status. We have a problem in this country. I don't like it any more than you do, but we need to have a solution on what we do. Right now, what we have is de facto amnesty, and that is just not acceptable. We need to have a system by which people can come out of the shadows and they can register, pay back taxes, pay a fine, pass a background check, learn English, and then get something called a provisional visa. And that could be anywhere from 5 to 10 years where you have that provisional visa while Congress was working out how to secure the border and actually fix the legal system that we have now. And so that is a tough but fair system by which people can come forward and then actually start to work and pay taxes and be here in the country legally. Again, not cutting in front of the line, but going in line once all the other problems are solved to get residency. What is as important as fixing our immigration system is how we talk about this issue. Harsh tone and rhetoric for the last few years from a few elected officials and a few groups have really turned off Americans and immigrants of all backgrounds. We already are known for wanting to support the rule of law. We should also communicate that we embrace immigration and that we will create a system that reflects our values. And so what I hope is that you would help conservatives who are really putting their neck on the line to work on a solution that is going to fix our problems here and be proactive and not a barrier to immigration reform. You can be conservative and be for immigration reform, and I ask that you be part of the solution. Thank you.
Jennifer says, U.S. immigration system's broken. It's a conservative issue, and there are 5 components that need to be addressed. Number 1, the legal system needs to be overhauled. 2, family reunification as a primary component to bring immigrants here needs to change. Number 3, enforcement and secure borders continue to be an issue, but it needs to be handled differently, and states should have greater say. Number 4, worker verification is important. And number 5, earn legal status. Harsh tones and rhetoric are a turnoff. This is a conservative issue, immigration is, because it helps business. Not doing anything is, in de facto, amnesty. And now it is with great pleasure that I call to the podium the Honorable Raul Labrador, U.S. Representative from Idaho, District 1. Congressman.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. Thank you for having me this year. We have great minds here today, both on the panel and outside, who can actually solve this immigration problem. Let this be an opportunity to generate great ideas that make our country more prosperous. One area we as conservatives need a grander vision on is the way forward to reforming and modernizing our immigration system. We're a country where there are no barriers to success and no boundaries to achieving our full potential. It doesn't matter who you were born as or who you were born to, your dreams have a chance. That's attracted people here from around the world to live and build a better life. Unfortunately, because our immigration system is broken and Congress has failed to fix it, the prosperity of our nation is currently threatened. It's time we reformed and modernized our immigration system for a stronger economy and a brighter future for our country. It's time our immigration system pushed us into the future, not held us back. That's why I'm looking forward to this panel, one of the most important, I believe, here today, which will add ideas about how to create a lasting and modern immigration policy that works in the 21st century and beyond. I practiced immigration law for 15 years and have been interested in finding solutions to our broken immigration system for a long time. I experienced the difficulty of working within the current immigration system and the inefficiency created by our patchwork of immigration laws. The starting place for reforming and modernizing our immigration system must be securing our borders and effective enforcement of our immigration laws. Period. If we don't secure our border and enforce the law before any reform, it will never happen. And this is where we as conservatives need to understand. This is the golden opportunity for us as conservatives to get the enforcement system that we need in the United States. Next, we need to focus on fixing the other major elements of our immigration system. We must create, as Helen indicated, a robust guest worker program that adequately matches willing workers with employers according to the flexible free market forces and reflects the needs of America today. We must also create a better high-skill immigration process. Many foreign students are forced by a broken immigration system to leave shortly after graduation, even when they have game-changing innovations that could make our economy better. They end up starting businesses elsewhere. The world is competing for the jobs of the future. It's time the United States started competing for them too. We conservatives must take the lead when dealing with the millions of undocumented people in our country. And when we do, we must honor our rule of law and our history as a nation of immigrants. Anyone who wants to become a legal permanent resident or a naturalized citizen of the United States is welcome to apply. But the key is that they must follow the same procedure that will be available to all immigrants. It would be a travesty, in my opinion, to treat those who violated our laws to get here much better than those who have patiently waited their turn to come to the United States the right way. America's freedoms and opportunities draw people from every nation. While we are under no obligation to accept everyone seeking to make a future for themselves here, to those who wish to come here legally, we can provide a fair path. To those who have illegally sought our hospitality, we can offer a fair chance to redeem themselves. And to the American people, we can offer a modern immigration system that will keep America strong, safe, and free. Remember, our conservative principles are eternal, and I appreciate Helen again reminding us what our conservative principles are. Limited government, personal responsibility, and a strong commitment to free enterprise and liberty. We have ideas that work. We have ideas that can win. We just have to work to make that happen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Congressman. We are a country with no barriers to success. Your dreams have a chance. Time our immigration system pulls us into the 21st century and not behind. Enforcement and border security are crucial, and this is a terrific opportunity to get that done. Helen Kriebel's idea of the red card, the temporary work permit, is a critical component to solve the problems dealing with immigration and business needs. Taking advantage of foreign-born university students is also a great opportunity to have top talent meet business demands. It would be a mistake to let those who violated the law have preference over those who have followed the law and come here legally. Those who have not followed the law can be offered a fair chance to redeem themselves. Conservative principles work, and they should be applied towards immigration reform. And now we start the conversation. And so I ask you all, we hear such terrific solutions to a very complex problem. So what's the problem of getting it implemented? It's not that there is a lack of great ideas as to how to solve the problem. Is it just a problem of lack of a political will, or is it a problem because the same old who revisited us and gave us, doomed the prospects for serious immigration reform in 2007 are back once again? Congressman, how about that?
Well, Jennifer talked about this, and it's so important for us to understand the Democratic Party has a problem right now. They have to pick between their two favorite children. They have to pick between the Hispanic groups and the labor unions. And every time they have to make that decision between those two groups, they actually pick the labor unions every single time. The recent immigration reform did not work in 2007. Was pretty simple. There was a Durbin Amendment that was supported by Senator Durbin and then Senator Barack Obama. Senator Barack Obama voted for the amendment. It was 49 to 48 that it passed in the Senate. And everybody knew that if that amendment passed in the Senate, it was going to kill any kind of immigration reform deal. It passed the Senate. It passed by just one vote. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the Democrats and the president in particular, who voted for that amendment as a senator, is going to be willing to actually have a robust guest worker program. That's the only way we're going to fix this problem. We fixate on the 12 million. To me, the question is not the 12 million. What do we do with the 12 million? To me, the question is, what do we do to have an immigration system that is workable for the 21st century? We don't have an immigration system that works that way, and the only way we can do that is by having a guest worker program that allows willing workers and willing employers to be able to work together. Helen's idea is a good idea. I'm not sure that that's the only solution, but we have to have a guest worker program. Republicans will not support any immigration reform without a vibrant guest worker program for the future.
And yet when we look at this issue and we see that the guest worker program needs to be a component issue, for an important component, then you do have those who say, well, citizenship needs to be equally component. Is citizenship and federal programs such as welfare programs, are those the poison pill of 2013? Anybody?
Well, I think that the reason why I talked about the 5 different components is that you have to address all 5 components. Otherwise, there's a gaping hole in our system. And so I think that the earned legal status that we talk about should be one of the last things that we address, because we have to fix the system that is broken right now.
So Jennifer, let me just, okay, so the fact that we have, in today's day and age, when we know that security is a big issue, 12 million people whom the federal government can't account for them, supposedly. We don't know who exactly we are, though we as a community do know who they are, and we also know who's employing them. We don't know who they are, and that's not part of as critical an issue as border security?
No, it absolutely is part of it. What I'm saying is that we have to, and the federal government doesn't have, the American people don't have the confidence in the federal government to do the job. And in 1986, when Ronald Reagan actually passed true amnesty, there wasn't a follow-up to securing the border and fixing the legal system. And so because of that, we now have to propose something that truly secures the border and that has a legal way for people to come through. And when there are certain things that are put into place, we call them triggers, then earned legal status can begin. But until then, you're not going to gain the confidence of American people that you're going to actually do those things first.
What do we mean by, Congressman, what do we mean by border security? And why is the border only the southernmost border of the country, and why does it not address the northern border as well?
It's actually
or the water. Florida's a peninsula.
Yeah. It's not the southern border. We need border enforcement. We also need interior enforcement. And what Jennifer's saying is so key. The American people are a fair people. They have no problem with figuring out what to do with the 12 million. But the problem is that we keep emphasizing the 12 million. That's not really the problem that we have with immigration. The problem is, what do we do about security? What we need to have is we need to finish the fences that were promised to the people at the border. We need to have interior enforcement so the local law enforcement agencies can actually do the work that they need to do. But we also need to have things like E-Verify and other things that some of it will be self-enforcement at the employment level. So if we figure out what to do first with the enforcement, if we use those as triggers, in order to get us to the legal status for the people that are here illegally, this is our golden opportunity as conservatives to actually get the immigration system that we need.
Dan Garza.
The Congressman is absolutely right. This is a golden opportunity where I think we can have smart and effective policy. It seems to me that the political posturing has been on the other side, where they have sort of dug in on one policy prescription, which is a straight path to citizenship. And yes, it may have a desired political outcome. That's part of the problem, that they're unwilling to compromise because they continue to use this as a wedge issue instead of getting to the solution. And so millions of people are suffering because of it. Our economy is hindered because of it. Families remain divided, and nobody will come to the middle on the other side. And that was the issue the other time, the last time around. And I'm concerned that reasonable people who have now offered up solutions, like the Congressman, who are willing to come to the middle and compromise, we're not going to see that on the other side, again, for political posturing, and we're going to have nothing. And if in this time around we don't achieve immigration reform that is sensible and market-based, I don't know if we're going to have this conversation again for a long, long time to come.
And yet, Whit Ayers, you were talking about that, and one of the things that we need to be looking at is that you said we need more allies, and we need to have a different message, not varying from the principles, but the tone needs to be different. My sense is that if you had an opportunity to be able to speak in Spanish, you would frame this debate in a way that perhaps others haven't done so. Well, how would that be?
Helen, I've talked with a lot of conservatives since the election in November, and I have seen a remarkable willingness to at least address this issue in an open-minded and fair manner that is consistent with our principles. People understand the need for more allies, and they also understand the need for a different tone. You cannot run against a group of people and hope to have those people turn around and support you. And the idea that we can use harsh tones against the undocumented without affecting how the people who are American citizens look at us is delusional. It is just delusional. So we have to have the tone that Ronald Reagan demonstrated. We have got to reach out and say, listen, anyone who shares our principles, anyone who shares our belief in free markets and individual liberty and personal responsibility, we want you as part of this team. And we want you to fall in with us and create a better America. I know that we've got an opportunity now. A number of our clients, particularly in the Senate, are very open in a way that they have not been in years to putting together a package that I hope most of us would feel is fair. I certainly hope that the principles that Helen and others have mentioned on the temporary worker program will be a key part of that. But I am more optimistic than I have been in a decade that we can actually get something done.
Helen Kriebel, what's the feedback that you're getting from your proposal? Are you as optimistic as Whit Ayers?
Well, I go back to what you said, which is there the will to actually pass something? I have yet to meet a person who doesn't like the red card plan, work permit plan, and yet people are not putting it forward. They are not dedicating themselves to getting an efficient guest worker program done. And you know, when we talk about things like the undocumented have to pay back taxes, if you would just think about, say the person's been here 20 years. He's earned $30,000. Now he has to pay the taxes for 20 years ago, plus the IRS interest. Now let's compound that annually to the point of today. So his little back taxes and a penalty will be $500,000. Is he going to pay it back? Is he going to be able to do that? No, he's not. So let's be realistic about what we expect. And the second thing I'd like to mention is we always talk about students who overstay or visas, people who come on tourist visas. If this card is part of any employment thing, it doesn't matter how you came here. If you haven't been through a security check and you don't have a job, which is proved by a red card, you will not be hired. Who in their right mind would hire an undocumented person who's here illegally if you have ready access to legal workers? So you don't have to worry about that separation. The federal government doesn't need a role. This will solve that problem. And that's what we need. We don't need E-Verify. We need something very simple like this that is doable, that's private sector, and stays away from government control of visas.
Congressman.
I just want to ask Helen a question. Please. How do you determine the number of guest workers? You said something in your speech about we'd let the free market. Can you be more specific about how you determine that number?
An employment agency and so on.
If there are jobs going begging in the United States, why don't we fill them if there are willing workers who will take them and do it in a legal, transparent way? When you establish quotas, like I hire H-2B workers. I've been involved in this personally for 20 years. My heart is in it. I am passionate about the workers who come. I live in Colorado. There are 66,000 H-2B workers in the United States, visas. I truly believe Colorado needs 150,000. What happens? People know that the jobs on the ski slopes, in landscaping, in construction, in agriculture are there going begging. How do you think those jobs get filled? How do you think people think about that? They think if I can get there, there's a job waiting for me. This is senseless, absolutely senseless. Quotas do not make sense. Government does not know how many jobs are needed in different areas of the private sector. The private sector knows. And that's what I mean by saying, let the market work. The market is amazing.
Helen, if I can just interrupt you for a minute. It has to be a process that's somewhat flexible.
Very flexible.
If it's very rigid, then especially for temporary work, well, temporary work might mean you might be employed for just a very short period. It might even stop earlier than you had anticipated because business isn't going the way anticipated, or it could even extend longer. So there has to be some flexibility in the process.
And it may be 100,000 PhDs that are needed by Silicon Valley. It doesn't matter. If the job is there and it's going begging and there are people who want to fill that job for us, let's make the match.
I have, I'd like for Dan and Jennifer to look at this issue. It seems to me that, as a journalist covering this national story, there are two broad generalizations that are made. Number one, Hispanics don't care about law and order. And number two, Republicans really hate Hispanics or Latinos. Jennifer.
Well, it's a myth that Hispanics want open borders. I mean, when criminals, true criminals that come over, drug traffickers, human traffickers who come and who are Hispanic, they prey on the Hispanic community. And so, I mean, working across the aisle with Democrats, Independents, Republicans, if you're Hispanic, you also want a secure border too. You want a fair system. So that's just a myth. And the fact that conservatives, I think, like Hispanics, but like I said before, the tone and the rhetoric in the past couple of years has really impacted the Hispanic community. You take that with the Democrats sort of seizing on some of that rhetoric and then using it against us, then you have a problem. I'm from California originally when Pete Wilson first put in Prop 187. Now 60% of Hispanics actually voted for Prop 187. But what the Democrats were able to do, and the tone and some of the verbiage that was used on our side, was able to be used against us, and it continues. And same thing with SB 1070 in Arizona. You can be conservative and be for immigration reform and still not have the harsh tones and the rhetoric. And to that point, on our website, HispanicLeadershipNetwork.org, we put together the do's and don'ts, no matter where you stand on immigration, on how to talk about it. so that you can be totally, not harsh to the Hispanic community, because when we talk about it and you're talking about deporting someone's grandmother, they think that you don't like them. And so we can change that, because conservatives do agree with, or Hispanics do agree with us on many issues, the economy, education, healthcare, but they're not listening because of the harsh tone on immigration.
Congressman, would you, go ahead. I'm sorry, Congressman.
I just want to, I know tone is important, but we need to stop flagellating ourselves, okay? The President of the United States voted for an amendment that killed immigration reform, and yet he got 75% of the Hispanic vote. So we need to stop blaming ourselves for this problem. We need to be the party of ideas. We need to be the party of actually solving things.
Congressman, so, I'll take just a...
Let me just finish. Let me just finish, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Ronald Reagan was able to accomplish conservative things by speaking in moderate tones. That's something that we can do as Republicans much more effectively. The problem with the modern Republican Party is that you have a bunch of Republicans who speak like conservatives and act like moderates. We need Republicans who can speak like moderates and act like conservatives.
Absolutely.
So let's stop blaming ourselves. Let's just be a party of action. Let's fix this immigration problem, and let's stop talking about the rhetoric. I think it's important that we have better rhetoric, but you have 5 Republicans who have bad rhetoric. The rest of them are actually pretty good about what we're saying about the immigration issue. So let's stop talking about this and let's get it done.
So the Republican Party doesn't have a branding problem on this issue?
Because the media, because we keep talking in panels about spending 30 minutes in a 1-hour panel talking about the rhetoric when we're talking about 5 people in our party. Let's stop talking about it and let's just actually get immigration reform done.
Well, if
and
it's
we will be successful.
I would suggest to you that if it's only 5 people of the party, identify those 5 people and then speak aspirationally. Because maybe the aspirational part, and this is former Florida Governor Jeb Bush saying it, the party needs to be more aspirational in its message.
I agree with him 100%.
Dan Garza.
I think this notion from the liberal side, or this picture that they've painted that conservatives do not care about minorities, is defamation of the worst kind.
Absolutely.
It's almost evil. I am unapologetically conservative, and I'm proud of my conservative values and the values that my parents inculcated in me and the ones that I'm passing on to my children. I am conservative because I believe that the fastest way to get those at the bottom up the income scale is through free markets, free enterprise, limited government, sound money, free trade, risk-taking, entrepreneurship. The true heroes of the economy are businessmen, businesswomen who risk money. I'm tired of this game that somehow minorities who sign up as conservatives don't care about their own. That is ridiculous. And that's offensive to me. I care about my community deeply, which is why I'm a conservative and which is why I'm involved in advancing public policy. Thank you.
Would anybody disagree that when it comes to immigration reform, family reunification needs to be removed as the primary way to have immigrants come into the country, as primary motivation? Or let's put it this way, does everybody agree that family reunification should no longer be the priority?
I disagree with that. I just think we need to emphasize our skills needs more. I don't think we need to de-emphasize family reunification, but I do think we need to emphasize our needs in the market more.
I think there needs to be a balance, because right now it's, like I said, 7% are coming for work, 90% are coming for family reunification, and so it needs to be balanced.
So does this mean we raise the number of immigrants who come legally to the country, including that process, or do we keep it at more or less the same number? Approximately 1 million are immigrants come legally to the country every year. Is that number the right number? Well, and if it isn't, then family reunification then needs to be reworked so that it's done as Jennifer suggests.
We may need to do both. There's some categories right now that currently exist that just don't make any sense. There's an adult sibling category that takes 20 to 30 years for people to come to the United States, that's not family reunification when you're saying that I have to have all of my siblings in the United States. I don't think that category should exist. The other category is the diversity visa. We have 55,000 visas that is just a visa lottery. You know, all of a sudden, luck of the draw, you decide who comes to the United States. Those are categories that we can remove and add additional high-skilled workers or temporary workers. But we don't need to de-emphasize, I think, the other family reunification like children and spouses. We should always encourage children and spouses to be with their families.
Whittiers, what is the likelihood that we are going to see, in your best estimation today, because you can't speak for tomorrow maybe, what's the likelihood that we're going to see immigration reform in 2013?
Better than it's been in 10 years. I don't know that I can give you a probability, but I do know that some of the members of the Gang of Eight in the Senate are very optimistic that they will be able to put together a bill that will gain about half the Republican votes and almost all the Democratic votes, which would mean somewhere around 70 to 75 votes coming out of the Senate. If they're able to do that, it would have a whale of a head of steam going into the House, and it would provide a lot of cover for those in the House who find a vote for immigration reform difficult. That may be on the optimistic side, but I will tell you that there's some people deeply involved in this in the Senate who believe that can happen.
Congressman Labrador, same question. What's the likelihood that we're going to see immigration reform this year, 2013?
I think it's the highest that we've had in a long time. I think we are very optimistic. I actually think the House is going to actually be more proactive than the Senate, and you're going to see that in the near future. But the question again is whether we can actually overcome the power of the labor unions in the Senate.
So the labor unions continue, and Helen, I would imagine, Helen Kriebel, I would imagine the labor unions aren't quite as thrilled with your temporary work program. Have you gotten any feedback from them at all?
We haven't, no, none. Because we focus, though, on guest worker permit program, I think the pitfall that I'm seeing developing on almost all sides is picking winners and losers. And that frightens me because it's very un-American. We don't pick winners and losers. We don't say, okay, we're going to raise the visas for the highly educated. Okay, we're going to raise visas for agriculture. We're going to raise visas for dreamers. And everybody else can suffer. That is not the American way. All men are created equal. Let's fix the problem across the boards. Then I think at least this piece can get done. Citizenship has always polarized us. It has always caused major immigration bills to come down. Let's get something done. If we end this year without having passed an important bill, we will all be deeply grieved, and the guest worker permit piece is a piece that consensus can be done. It is the cornerstone of any immigration bill.
Congressman.
I just saw a poll this morning that said that even though there's differences between the parties as to how to solve the immigration problem, if we don't fix the immigration problem this year, it says 79% of the American people, Republicans and Democrats, are going to be upset.
And what does that mean for 2014? Because people are looking at 2014.
Absolutely. So I think it's imperative that we get something done this year.
I think what's important to point out is that conservatives and Democrats are working together on a solution, and that having conservatives at the table is very important so that it is a conservative solution. And what we need to watch out for are two things: big labor and President Obama using this as a wedge issue for 2014, and him being the barrier, and then trying to blame conservatives, which is why it's so important, as Congressman Labrador says, is to be part of the solution and to put forward our ideas. Because really what I foresee, if this does fall apart, it will be because of the president.
Jennifer, is the citizenship component as critical to Hispanic groups, and I'm saying Hispanic groups because this is the voting bloc, it's the largest minority, it's the voting bloc that people are really going after, trying to appeal to, and it's not an insignificant one. Is the citizenship a make or break issue, or is residency, permanent residency, just as viable an issue?
Right. Well, with the Hispanic community, I mean, we're not monolithic, and it varies from the different parts of the country, from Florida to the Southwest to Texas, on where Hispanics stand. But I can tell you that the Hispanic community are pretty open to earned legal status, and we have told them, especially if they're on the more liberal side, that it is their job to hold their president accountable to not use this as a political issue and to actually get something done, because a lot of the groups that we've talked to, unless they're being disingenuous, are fine with an earned legal status and don't want it to break apart because of citizenship.
Dan, ladies first. Do you mind if I let Helen Kriebel? Helen, go ahead.
I just would like to ask everybody, if you have earned legal status, how many government monitors for whether you fulfilled this earned status or that qualification? Remember that in Obamacare, it's 17,000 new IRS agents just to find out whether the young people have bought their insurance. If we don't want government to expand, we need to leave it to the private sector. We cannot decide what makes you earning your citizenship or not. It's endless expansion of government.
Thank you, Helen. Dan.
To your question, I don't know of many folks who are here currently unauthorized who would say it's citizenship or nothing. Yeah. There's a word in Spanish, it's called permanencia. And I'm not talking about permanent residency. Permanencia is the certainty that you won't be deported tomorrow. It's just you'll be around tomorrow to be here with your children. And so if you were going to ask, well, let's at least get legality, at least let's get authority to remain in the country and work and provide for our children, I think that's going to be the preference. And I think that's where, the compromise is, where we can come together on, as opposed to, again, digging in your heels and, getting this citizenship that may not be politically viable. I think we need to be a little bit astute about that. So, the businessman, to Helen's point, they also seek certainty in the market, how much they're going to be taxed next year, how much they're going to be regulated. And so in the community, in the Hispanic community, we also seek those kind of certainties too. So I think it is going to be important that at least we come out with something. At minimum, let's achieve legality. And I think everybody would agree with that in the community of folks who are here unauthorized.
Whit, you were talking so much about the importance of, resurrecting the party to have a different message. Part of the challenges that everybody has, and I would, agree with Jennifer that there's a stereotype that Hispanic voters Hispanics are not monolithic. It's a heterogeneous group with different components. So how do you resurrect the message, and what's the different message that you think needs to be made clear to be able to strengthen conservatives and strengthen the party?
Within the Hispanic community, it's important to remember that the number one issue is jobs and the economy. It's not immigration reform. But immigration reform is a threshold issue. We've got to get it right on immigration before Hispanic voters will listen to us on jobs and the economy or taxes or anything else. There's an old saying in politics, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And immigration is that threshold issue for a great many Hispanic citizens. That's one reason why I think it's so important to get it right, so we can open ears and open minds to the Republican message on so many other things regarding jobs and the economy and taxes and individual liberty. So we need to get immigration reform right, and then we need to reach out in a very aggressive manner. We've seen how it works. George W. Bush did it in 2004. He got 44% of the Hispanic vote. He got a majority of the Hispanic vote in the Sun Belt, in part because he reached out very aggressively. He took his campaign into the Hispanic community. He had a sympathetic message, and it works. We can do much, much better in the Hispanic community than we did in 2008 and 2012. And if we do, we'd stand a very good chance of winning the 2016 presidential election.
Dan.
Let me just throw out a quick stat. Texas went 55% for George Bush in 2004. In 2008, McCain got 35%. In this year's election, or this past year's election, 20% from Hispanic community in Texas. That shows the decline. When we neglect the community, when we're not in the community, then you're going to have these kind of results, and we cannot continue that direction.
And of course, Helen, with your plan as an important component, we look at, when we talk about the community, it broadens what the community means.
Indeed. But I think my message to all of us is new immigrants, no matter who they are, tore themselves out of their country, gave up their languages, gave up their friends, their culture, their country to come here. They came for freedom and opportunity. It is new immigrants who understand what America is about and who can join with us to save America, to return us back to the principles of our founding fathers. That is a charge I would love to see Hispanics and other new immigrants take on. They can do it. They can help us.
And Jennifer, this can be done, and it would be a welcome message, but there are a few critical challenges.
I'm sorry.
This is something that can definitely be done. Hispanics do want immigration reform. They do want law and order. They do want equality of opportunity, but there are clearly some challenges.
There's some challenges, but I don't think all is lost. Like I said, we were at 44% in 2004 with President Bush, so the right candidate, the right messenger can absolutely reach out to the community. And the biggest part, the biggest barrier is just truly engaging with the community. Like Dan says, we have to be in the communities talking to people about our issues, about what we care about, because they do care about those same issues.
And Congressman, last word goes to you. Clearly, you are a member of the Hispanic American community, and yet as a U.S. Congressman, you represent all. Yours is the type of voice that could be critical in this conversation.
The important thing, at the age of 13, I became a Republican. I became a Republican because I had a Democratic mother. She was a single mom, that she and I moved from Puerto Rico to Las Vegas. She decided that she wanted to register to vote. And at the time, it was 1981, and she registered as a Republican. She registered as a Republican even though she had been a JFK Democrat her entire life. And she registered as a Republican because she believed the Republican Party was a party of ideas, and she believed that Ronald Reagan was a good president who was making America a stronger nation and was making the world a stronger world. It's time again that Republicans become the party of ideas and that we elect men and women who can inspire single women from Puerto Rico to become Democrats, who can inspire young people to become Republicans, not Democrats, young people to become Republicans. And it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, what your marital status, anything about you, that you want to become a Republican because you believe that we can make America stronger, better, and the envy of the world again. So thank you very much.
And I think it's extraordinary, and thank you to CPAC for having this panel. I can't think of a better group of men and women to come together to discuss this important issue. And thank you so much to Al Cardenas and CPAC for hosting this event and for inviting me to be a moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in thanking this wonderful panel for this conversation this morning.